Hi, my name's Bennett and this is Loose Ends. Welcome to the official video tutorial for my pattern, the Triangle Tote. Today we're going to be learning how to make one of our very own. For best practice, I recommend using the PDF and video at the same time so you can follow along on each, just so you don't miss out on any details. This is just a reminder that this pattern is for personal use only. Selling the finished product or the pattern itself is strictly prohibited under copyright law. If you have any questions before, during, or after the process of making your bag, you can email me at looseenscrochet@outlook.com or DM me on Instagram at looseends. Without any further ado, let's get started on making our very own triangle tote. Here's all the materials you'll need to make your very own triangle tote. For yarn, we're going to be using t-shirt yarn as always. This is my favorite yarn to work with because it's an upcycled fiber. If you need any recommendations on where to buy this, you can find it in the pattern. You'll also need a 12mm US crochet hook, a pair of scissors, and a sewing needle if you want to weave in your loose ends. That's all you need. Let's get started. So we're going to be using 2 strands of our t-shirt yarn to start. I find this makes the bag a lot more sturdier and comes together a lot quicker. Let's make a slip knot with our yarn. Reminder that these ends won't be weaved in later unless you want them to be, so make them as long or short as you want. I recommend about 3 to 6 inches. So I've got my slip knot here. I'm going to insert my hook. And to start, we're going to chain 20. So once you've chained 20, we're going to start at the very first loop from our hook and we're going to insert a single crochet. This is a tip that I always live by with my projects. When you're working into your foundation chain, rather than working in the traditional front V's, I'm going to turn my work over and work in the back loops. This just creates a cleaner look at the very end, so I recommend it. I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to form my first single crochet. Then we're just going to continue this till we get to the end of our row. Alright, so I put a single crochet into every stitch on my row, and I now have 20 single crochets. To start our next row, we're just going to turn over our work, and rather than chaining 1 to start our new row, I like to work in that very same stitch. That way it just makes the rows a little less wonky and gives it a cleaner, tighter look at the end. For this project as well, we're going to be working in the back loops only for our stitches. That'll give it its ribbed effect at the very end. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook into the back loop only. I'm going to yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through both. Again, back loop only, and I'm going to put a single crochet there. So it's really just the same thing the whole rest of the way. You're doing single crochets into every stitch, back loop only. Reminder, whenever you start a new row, you don't want to chain 1 to start. You just want to work directly in that same stitch. So I'm now at the end of my second row, and as you can see, because we did back loop only, you can see that ribbing starting to form. So once again, to start my next row, I'm going to turn my work. I'm not going to chain 1. I'm going to work directly into this first stitch. Back loop only. And I'm putting a single crochet into every stitch. As I mentioned, this stays the same for the rest of our square. So we're doing single crochets, back loop only, into every stitch for 20 rows. I'm going to go ahead and finish my square off camera, and I'll see you guys when we're done. So I just got to the end of my 20 rows, and I just wanted to show you how I finish off. So I have my work here. I'm just going to chain 1. And I'm going to grab my scissors and cut my loose ends to my desired length. And then I can just pull this through and pull to tighten. And there we go. So that's our first square done. Now we can just repeat this 2 more times so we end with 3 squares. Okay, so I've just finished my 3 squares. I have them all here, and I'm going to show you how I lay them out to assemble them. We have to move to the floor because these squares are huge. For all 3 panels, you want to make sure the ribbing is all going in the same direction. We'll do this way. And you also want to make sure your loose ends are as so. So the top 2 panels you want the loose ends on the top and bottom, like you see here. And for the middle panel, it'll be going out to the sides, like so. So now comes the time where we're gonna assemble our bag. I recommend having the diagram at the ready, but here it is as well, just in case. So we're gonna be doing slip stitches to sew it together. And basically, these two are gonna fold in, and this one will fold up, like that. We're not gonna cut our yarn in between the sides, we're just gonna keep going consecutively. So I'm gonna move back to the table and I'm gonna start with my red side sewing together. At this point in our pattern, it says that you can use 1 strand or 2 strands of yarn. I personally like to go with 1 strand if I think it's thick enough, because I think it makes a less bulky finish. So I'm gonna be doing 1 strand. So we can go ahead and make a slip knot here, and I'll insert my hook. So as it says in your diagram again, this was panel A and this is panel B. We're gonna start by sewing these two together right here. So to start, I'm gonna insert my hook into the front loop only on panel A. And I'll do the exact same thing on panel B. It might be confusing because the stitches are now upside down, but it's the stitch that's further away from you that you're gonna go into. All right, now you can just yarn over and pull through all those loops on your hook to form a slip stitch. Again, I'm gonna go into my next stitch, front loop only on panel A, this one, as well as front loop only on panel B, the loop further away from me. And yarn over, and I'll slip stitch everything together. One more time, we have the front loop only on panel A. So both loops would look like that, but only one loop, the front loop, is this. And on panel B, if I were to go through both loops, it would look like that. However, I just want the front loop. And then I can yarn over and slip stitch. Now I'm just gonna repeat this process to slip stitch my whole row together. All right, I'm at my last stitch for this row. Just doing front loop only, front loop only. And there we go. There's our first side fully sewn together with slip stitches. Now we're gonna move on to our second side, which in your diagram is your green side. So the side that we just sewed together, I'm gonna pull that towards me to fold my panels together. So we're gonna be doing the exact same thing. However, this time it's gonna be harder because we don't have our traditional stitches to guide us. This is the side of our work that we made, so it's gonna be a bit harder to see where to put the holes. However, since it's t-shirt yarn, it's thicker and it's a bit easier to see, so be grateful for that. If you can see here, because of the ribbing, it's a bit easier to differentiate each row. So I want you to take note of where my ribbing sticks out here, where these pillars kind of form. At the very end of your row, you should have a hole up here, like so. There's one here, one here. Basically every pillar has a corresponding hole at the end of the row. In addition to that, if I stretch my row apart, you can see a single strand kind of connecting the two pillars together. So I have my pillar, I pull apart, and I see this hole here. I can do it anywhere. This middle hole, this one, there's one for every stitch. So in total, I should have 10 poles and 10 connecting stitches in between, which equals 20. So even though we don't have our conventional V's to show, we can still have 20 slip stitches that we need to make. On the other panel, it's visible as well. We have pillar, hole, or the gap in between. So to sew this side together, I haven't cut my string. I still have the exact same piece of string here. I'm gonna avoid these loose ends that are in the way. I'm gonna find that first hole, which will kind of look like where you tied your yarn off to finish each panel. So my first hole is right there. And on the corresponding side, it looks the same. I can yarn over and pull through to slip stitch. Now, I'll turn my work there. Now we're at a pillar, as you can see. We have go through that hole and the pillar on the other side, yarn over and slip stitch. Now we're at a hole, in, and the hole's right there, yarn over, slip stitch. Again, we're at a pillar, as you can see here. So I'm gonna insert, pillar through the other side, yarn over, and pull through. Now we're at a hole, so I can go in here, yarn over, and slip stitch. Now I'm just gonna continue this process, slip stitching my two sides together until I get to the end of my row. I'm now at my last pillar, as you can see here. Gonna go in as usual and slip stitch. Now we're at the end of our row. We're actually coming back to kind of those traditional V stitches. I'm gonna put my last slip stitch for this row into kind of what seems like the first V on the next side. It's a little hard to show because it's kind of disguised. So you can see there's the upside down V on one hook and on the other hook. And I'm gonna slip stitch these together. So as you can see, now we have our first two sides sewn together. We have two sides of a square sewn together. It looks a little bit different than our original diagram, but if it helps, this on the bottom is panel A and this is panel B. Like that, it was just folded over since we sewed it. To help give a bit of a visual, our bag, if I fold this in half, this is my original panel A and my panel B. So next we're gonna add on our panel C up here, and we're gonna sew together these sides here. I'm adding in my panel C, and I just wanna make sure that my ribbon still goes in the same direction, and my loose ends on panel C are at the top and bottom. So in our diagram, we're now sewing together our yellow sides. On panel A, it's this one, because it originally was down here, but we've just folded it up now. And on panel C, it's this one. It's easiest to identify if you just find the V's on both of your panels and know that we're gonna be sewing the V's together. I'm gonna rotate my work here. And now, to attach panel C, I'm gonna find that last V on the row, and I'm gonna insert my hook through the front loop only. And then on panel A, I can do front loop only, which is now the loop that's further away from me, this one here. Insert, yarn over, and pull through these loops. You wanna make sure this is nice and tight because it is the corner stitch. You wanna make sure everything's super clean and stays together well. Now again, I can move to my next stitch, front loop only. And as well on panel A, front loop only. Can yarn over and pull through both those loops. So this is the exact same process we started with, sewing our V stitches together. So I'm just gonna continue as we have been. I'm at my last stitch here, sewing these sides together. And voila. I've just turned my work back to its original place. So we have panel A, B, and C. This is the side we just sewed together. And as you can see, the last step we have to do is just fold this in half. And if I turn my work fully over, you can see that this is the side we need to sew together to make our bag. So we're now at our blue side, which is our last side we're going to be sewing together. And we have to remember this works the same way as the second side we sewed together, in the sense that we don't have our conventional V-stitches. As you can see, we have our pillars with the hole at the top, and we have our spaces in between. So pillar, hole, pillar, hole, pillar. I'm calling them a pillar because you can see the ribbing sticking out, kind of makes like a tall, very noticeable pillar. If you're still confused about this last side sewing it together, you can rewind and watch the second side again. Alright, I have my last stitch ready to be sewn together. I'm just gonna find what looks like the first stitch of my next side. I'm gonna insert my hook there. And same goes here. There we go. Then I yarn over and slip stitch everything together, as we have been. As you can see, just naturally sewing the sides together, there's a little bit of space left over, so I'm gonna add one more slip stitch, going back in that same stitch I was just in, and now going across to the other panel, inserting my hook. I'm gonna slip stitch, and voila. That helps just close the gap there. Now we're finally ready to finish with our yarn, so I'm gonna chain one, and cut with my scissors, and pull my hook through, and tighten. So now we have our bag really coming together. As I mentioned, this is the inside of our bag here, and these loose ends here, I'm just personally not a fan of them peeking out, so I am gonna sew them in. If you grab your sewing needle, you can put your yarn through. I'm just gonna go ahead and weave in these ends here to get rid of them. Now you can go ahead and turn your bag inside out. All right, ta-da! As you can see on the corners, we've lost our loose ends because they're stuck on the inside. What I'm gonna do is just find them with my hand, and I'm just gonna insert my hook where that hole is, and try my best to pull them through. There we go. And we're ready for the final step, which is just tying our handle together. So we have the two sides of our handle. You can see the point where our loose ends hang out. Now, rather than doing them right in the middle, we're actually gonna overlap the slightest bit to give it a bit thicker of a handle and a bit more strength. What I like to do is overlap about a row or so where that next pillar lines up. And then I go a stitch or two in. I'll go a stitch in. And then I can literally just pull my ends through that one side. And I'll do the same on this side. So line that row up, find that hole. I'm gonna pull my ends through. And now you'll kind of have this like 2-bar kind of thing. So just pull those loose ends tight. And now all we gotta do is tie them in a knot. Make sure it's really tight, because this is where all the weight will come from. Nice and tight. And just like that, it looks like we have a finished bag. Here is our finished bag. I am in love with it. Let's try her on. It's just the perfect size for all your daily essentials and would make a great gift for your loved ones. I hope you guys enjoyed this pattern. If you liked it, I have another one available on my website for the desk bag, so make sure to check that out. If you make one of these bags yourself, please make sure to tag me on Instagram @looseends or on TikTok @looseends crochet. I hope you all enjoyed this tutorial. I'll see you next time.